Well, thank you for another opportunity of explaining what we're doing down the road. As we look back, it's amazing what you do get through if you work hard on 2 days a week with just a very small gang. First thing we did in November, 3 of the trustees, we went on an archery course for a couple of days, and we are now qualified to teach novices with archery, which is very important because of health and safety and things like that. Des was the champion. He was the best of all of us, and that's good to keep the boss happy if the boss wins, because Des is our clerk of works down at the farm, and as he was the winner, that was very skillfully arranged. The gates that were stolen, you will remember. You remember this picture. In fact, the flowers were nicked first. They lasted about 3 weeks, and somebody lifted the hanging gardens of Babylon on either side. And then in the night, somebody decided to come along and just put an angle grinder through and whip the gates off. So we were gateless for quite a while, and I had to use a bit of fencing to put up as gates. We've got new gates now produced by Marquis, the blacksmith in Newent. And they've put in the gates themselves, they've put in Trac Newent. They were about £3,000. So fortunately, the insurance company paid for them, but we've got to send a picture to the insurance company to prove that we've put new gates up, which is fair enough as they've paid. We've also put up lighting. They're sort of Victorian light fittings. They're all the way up the drive. So as you come in, they go on, and you end up with a very nice system of lighting, and everybody's sort of thrilled to bits with that. You know, it's funny. You do something little like that, which we went to B&Q and bought them. I think were 40 quid each or something. Little post and little sort of lighting thing on the top. Obviously, you have to dig a trench all the way down there and get all the cables in, and which was another thing. But something little like that, everybody sort of notices. But most of the trenches we dig and the foundations we dig, and even you'll see in a moment, the end of the barn that we've fixed will all be covered up, and nobody will even know that we've done anything, which is very good for the Christian temperament. You should be able to do things without being patted on the back and praised and saluted for what you've done. You know, the Lord knows what you've done, and that's good enough. You don't need to be patted on the back by other people. So the lighting's been put in. We've got fishery protection at Trac now. We've got some fish from the Newent Lake because they were overstocked. So they came down with a box full of fish and slurped them in. But we've had to put these very expensive, they were made out of crates that we had in the rubbish pile. It's amazing what we do with rubbish. We've made the frame there and welded that up because underneath there, when the lake overflows, as it did once or twice in the last few weeks, it goes over the top and then it goes through a culvert into the leaden under the road. So we're trying to keep the fish in. We're hoping to get some carp as well, because kids really like fishing. I can't understand the attraction myself, but there's about 4.5 million anglers in the country, aren't there, or something like that? So it's the most popular sport, participation sport, apparently. The bulrushes are growing nicely, courtesy of Gerald Jones. We whacked them in and up they've come, and that's made the lake look more mature. The dining hall we've freshened up a little bit. We put some cladding on the front because it's the only building that we hadn't cladded, so we've cladded the top end and painted that up. And we're hoping maybe in our dreams to extend that building one day, because we can feed about 60, 65 in there, but it's a bit of a cramp when you're trying to feed together. So that's a possibility for the future, but at the moment that'll have to do. The Peace Garden is sort of opposite the dining hall if you've been down there, and we've got the butane tank there which supplies the gas for the site. is fitted there. We've got space in here for another one, which has got to go in because we're using more gas than we expected. And the steps have gone in, and all the flowers and the bushes and the hedging is developing nicely. The only thing we've got to do is put in the railings. On Tuesday, we welded them first, so we're fabricating our own railings and then painting them red lead, and then we'll have Buckingham green, which is Trac green, which we're painting everything else with. So they'll go hopefully up on the Peace Garden. At the back there, for the Newman family particularly, that's Keith's boat. It's our safety boat when the kids are out with their paddle boats. And sometimes they paddle or get pushed by the wind up to the end where the fishery protection gear is, and they can't get back. So that boat goes out and drags them back. That's up on the Peace Garden. You can see there's a pathway that's very ornate and nicely designed. It should be, because it was designed by Julian Dowell, who was a gold medalist from the Chelsea Flower Show many, many times, and he did it for nothing for us. So he was very pleased to see the end result, and Peter Dowell did some of the work, but we've done most of it. These benches here, there's a bench that goes across there that we've got in situ now that wasn't there for the picture, but they're in memory of Gail Ebsworth's mother and father, and Steve Ebsworth's mother and father. So it's very nice to have something to commemorate different individuals, and in fact the gazebo is to commemorate Sylvia and Arthur Lowe's son, who died some years ago. There's an arbour as well, courtesy of the Smeatons, and that went in there. That's the gazebo that Arthur Lowe donated first of all, and then he put it up. Then inside, our resident carpenter, Andrew Tyrrell, he put in a seat there so that people can go in there and just sit. And we've roofed it as well so that you won't get wet if you do go in there. But it's rather nice to just go inside there and be quiet and think about whatever you want to think about. The thuya hedge, this is here, was put in probably about a year ago now, so it's beginning to bulk up, and in a year or so's time it will be a really nice, not barrier between, but a division between John's garden, which is there, John Ettle's garden as the centre manager, and the Peace Garden, which is the back end of his garden. Then of course there's the wall that we've got to do. We've put up a wall to replace Tom's old wall, but there's the cladding. Well, that's Tom's old wall there. It's just a pile of stone, and that's got to be laid all along there, you know, and that's going to be a long job. So if any of you fancy doing a walling job, you can come and do that to your heart's content. But that will really finish off that area and make it really look nice. This is the stables, which is a building that we built completely from scratch. So there's loos and showers along there, and this is the disabled area. All this building here is disabled bedroom, and then a shower room or wet room for a disabled person. And these doors lead you into the dormitory and into the dining hall. Eventually we're going to connect this portion here with the chapel barn that you'll see in a moment. Then of course you've got to paint it, and that's fun, especially when it rains, because when it rains and you paint it with the old stuff they give you now that isn't like creosote. Creosote used to go on, if you remember. It just smells funny and all the rest of it, and it's health and safety hazard now apparently. But you put on this watery stuff that they sell to you now, and of course with the rain it just comes off again. So that was fun in the rain, but eventually we got it on, and it's now the same as the hayloft, which is to the left there. And also the stables was cladded, and then that had to be painted. And of course To get up there, you need scaffolding. Of course, that you can't see. But somebody had to put the scaffolding up there, which is really hard work, so that you can flip, flap, flop with the paint and also put the cladding up, of course. This is where we'll put the connection between the chapel barn, which is here, and this area, so that people can walk all the way through here into the chapel barn and eventually all the way through into the sports barn without even going outside. That's the barn as you may remember it, full of wood. And you say, what on earth for? Well, surprising how much wood costs for a start and how much you can use old timber to do a good job these days. All of that had to come out. Then all of the cladding on the side, which was in bad shape anyway, all that had to come off before we could start putting the thing upright, and eventually we'll clad it and make it into a really nice room. Then of course the scaffolding, and you can imagine how high that is. So we do look after the health and safety side. It is braced across there onto this building here, and it's braced back to the barn, so it's not going to fall over, but it's still quite an achievement even to get the scaffolding up, let alone work on it as well. This is the right hand side of the barn, which is has a steel frame in, and that's been put up right 2 or 3 years ago. That's the left hand side now, with all the side ripped off and exposing some of the beams. Here are the old timbers. They must be probably 200 years old, if not more. They're oak. They probably came out of a ship or something somewhere and were used by the farmer to put up into his barn. You can see the purlin there is broken, and all of these here, there's straps across there that have disappeared a few years ago, and most of these things are really in terrible shape, so it all had to come out. And there's the roof timbers that these will stay, and we're going to try and make a feature of those. So we'll have the sort of vaulted ceiling inside with a new roof on the top with insulation. We had to prop up this end to stop it falling over, and we've also had to put the scaffolding up that way. And even that, you know, it takes quite a while to do, and it's surprising how long these things take. Dear old John again, you show him a hole and he'll dig. Or even if there isn't a hole, he'll make a hole for you, he'll dig away. But here he's putting concrete blocks down so that we're supporting the bracing across there, because we've taken away quite a bit of soil there to put underneath a wall, because there was no foundations at all underneath this beam. So we've had to dig out underneath, putting a foundation, and then put blocks in to come up underneath the wall, so underpinning, I suppose you'd call it. So digging the foundation, you see Colin there digging underneath the beam, and it was raining, so we had to put an awning over the top, and John putting some concrete in there as well for the foundation. Then the other end of that wall, we had to dig out again. And this clay here, it looks just ordinary soil, but you go down with the spade, and if you hold on to the spade as it goes down, when it hits the ground, it takes your fingers off nearly. It really is hard. You have to work a technique of getting the spade down, and just at the last minute, take your hand off. Otherwise, it jars tremendously. And you have to chip away at it until you can get away with it. In fact, it's probably why the farmer put the whole thing on clay in the first place, because it was fine with that foundation. But of course, health and safety these days and building inspectors, they expect you to put in a wall underneath there and a wall underneath there. And we're bringing the two together. This is Muff Curtis. Muff comes down every Tuesday and Thursday and works extremely hard, and we're very, very pleased to have him helping us, and he just gets on with anything that he's asked to do. And this is one of the worst jobs imaginable, because he's a big bloke, and you can imagine he's got to duck underneath the beams and then use his spade, which isn't easy. And then the block work finally comes together, and the other end also, you can see how dodgy that is and how bad that is. So that had to be done as well, and eventually we end up with a foundation underneath that holds it all together. So now we can get on with the rest of the barn. Of course, nobody will ever see that, but that's months of work to get to that stage. We go for double usage at Trac if we possibly can. Those of you who went to the Glebe Chapel pageant will recognise the crib or the stable. We house it in the, well, have the pageant inside in the sports hall, and that recently was taken out of there, and it's used during the summer as a sort of awning or sort of cover for the old barbecue. So you get double usage out of lots of things at Trac. This is the biodigester, and we won't go into the details, but you can imagine if you have 150, 120 people on site, there's a lot of human waste to get rid of. And the biodigester churns away all the time. There are discs inside that churn away, and there's a pipe that goes down, not in the lake, of course, a completely different pipe that goes down into the sewer. So that churns away. These rocks here are in fact fiberglass, well, sort of foamy stuff, and you can hold them above your head. They're used in, they've been used in casualty, if you watch that medical program, and they're loaned to us by a local firm, and then sometimes they come down and say, well, we're shooting something for Merlin, can we have a few rocks? And they take the rocks away and bring the rocks back. So this biodigester was quite a difficult job to get in because it's actually 12 feet deep in there. So that had to be dug. Then that thing, which is quite big, had to be lowered down onto a concrete base, which had to be done, of course. And unfortunately, biodigesters churning away all the time, eventually the bearings go. So we've had to have the whole lid off and lift the whole thing out and replace the bearings, put it all back and get it churning again. So that was just another day's work. Mark Golding came down and helped us with that, which was really, really good. So we got that sorted because that's an absolutely vital thing that must keep going all the time. Little shed for the life jacket store, you throw up a little shed. That's double usage as well. Somebody wanted to get rid of a shed, so we said, thank you very much. And it's where we keep the oars and the life jackets, helmets, stuff like that for action on the lake. And those, the railings you've seen before, I think last year I told you they came from McDonald's, the hairpin fencing, and that really looks quite tidy now around the lake because we've got the patio all the way down there. Muff Curtis did that mostly on his own. Put in that patio, which will be a really nice area. Pontoon's still there to get onto the boats. And the boats are out at the moment, but they'll be put back into the water. And all we've got to do is put a gate across here so that we've got total control of an area that could be of a danger to the people using the site, especially the younger ones. These railings would have cost a fortune if you imagine how much the gates cost and then how much all this would have cost. But McDonald's just chucking them out, so we say thank you very much. In fact, McDonald's have just given us some, I suppose there's sofa things that they had upstairs in their McDonald's that they were just throwing away. So that's going to be our chill out area, coffee bar type of thing once we finish that in the barn. The bonfire area is still sort of lacking. We acquired the logs, and the kids sit on these, and we make a circle around. But we want to make a permanent area for a bonfire, maybe even sunken, so that it's out of the wind. Just another little job that needs doing. The trees at the back that we put in, those of you who came down and helped with the trees, maybe some of you did, those trees are really developing rather nicely. There's 500 trees there, so And we've got trees all over the site that have been put in recent years that are going very well. The assault course is looking very, very tired. It's pretty poor in places. It's sort of more those half rails, you know, that aren't really up to scratch, really. So we're designing a new assault course, and first of all, we're going to put in a new cargo net that will go in there, which has already been taken away, and then we'll steadily work through and extend it out this way as well. We've got some money towards that, so that's very helpful, because you have to have the proper timbers that are smooth, that are turned on a lathe, so that the kiddies don't get hurt, don't get splinters and all that stuff. Colin comes twice a week. He has put up these recycled basketball rings that we got from a college in Gloucester. They were throwing them out, and these one the other end, of course. And they're the proper job, as you can see underneath, they actually stick out from the wall, so that if you know anything about basketball, you can do a hook shot from underneath and hook it into the hole if you are good enough. And they're very high. But kids love to play basketball, and the girls too. Here's the work that we've been doing the last few weeks. The top of the scaffolding that you saw earlier. And putting in replacement timbers for the ones that we kicked out that were just useless. So it's a sort of lamination process. You put one in, and then you put another one alongside it, and then you put one up in between. So you've got three coach bolted together, which makes a very nice thick beam in the end that holds together. You might recognise this gentleman. Yes. And that's Paul up there helping us. They've been invaluable helping us do this particular job, which is quite difficult, especially for those of us who don't like being on the top of scaffolding. Here's the way it's done. There's the three timbers together, and they're all bolted together. It's not quite finished yet when this picture was taken, but they steadily worked through it, putting bits in here and there, and the top end is almost complete. It's a very good structure that they've put together, and you can see it's Paul and Gerald working on that, and Des too has been absolutely brilliant. Then you get minor maintenance all the time, little things like replacing that brick. Well, you know, you've got to smash out the old one, you've got to find another brick, then you've got to mix up some concrete. You know what these little jobs are like. And eventually the job's done, but it's another job that needs doing. Otherwise the place falls apart. New signs have to be put up. Legally, I suppose we're covered, and we're trying to encourage people to look after the guys that are there. The toilet block really needs a revamp completely. It needs to be completely rebuilt in blocks rather than having these temporary toilets, but they've been very useful so far. There's maintenance for this swing, which they really love, because down below there it's all muddy. And of course, kids being kids, they love being in the mud. That's kids for you, and they really enjoy that. And we've built both sides now, a proper platform that's level, that's not being scratched away by their feet. So we've had to build quite a bit onto that, and a few modifications are needed. The security is being beefed up. This is the bit that I was telling you earlier. John and Colin there are digging that trench. You say, well, it's only a trench. But you try digging down there when I don't know how many tractors have been over there and lorries and what have you. And it's as hard as rock. Little holes like that. You say, well, what's that for? Well, there's going to be a big post put in there with a television camera on the top. And digging a hole like that, you think, well, that's no problem, you try it. They spent a whole day digging that hole, 2 days in fact, to finish it off. And of course, the water level down there, the water table is pretty high at the moment, so you dig a hole and it fills up with water. And if you have to get down there, it's terrible. But when it's a small hole that you need, you can't get down there, so you have to try and dig and put your hand down and all sorts. That's the post that's about to go in. It's a 5 metre piece of metal, and it's going to have a camera on the top and wire and all the rest of it inside, and that's got to be somehow held and dropped in the hole. I haven't worked out how to do that yet. Then of course this little thing has got to be moved now, because we've got plans to move from the chapel barn, which is here, and fill in up to the big barn. So we're doubling the size of it, basically. Somebody had a wonderful idea one day. What if we turned it around and went, it was that Mel Cole, it was. Why don't we turn it around and go the other way? And oh yeah, that's a good idea. But it'll be brilliant, because it'll have probably enough for 120 people to sit down in that conference area. But that means this has got to be moved, and we've got to take it round the corner and out into the field next to that other green shed that I showed you a little bit earlier. The Ettles house still is standing up, which is quite amazing, considering we did most of the work on it. But they're, as I say, they've been there about 10 years now. We praise the Lord for them. We would value your prayers for John and Angela. They've got a lot on their plate, apart from the work here, their family pressures and all the rest of it, and the pressures of ordinary life. So pray for John and Angela particularly as they continue their work there at Trac.